shifting gears, let's talk a little bit about not necessarily just the flying, but when you do, I don't even know how many air shows you guys do a season. How many do you do a season on average?
About 75 typically. And that's doubled up, right? So there's Saturday and Sunday at most show sites. So typically we'll travel to in vicinity of 40 different locations.
All right. So if the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, let's say they travel to put on a performance, a demonstration in 40 different locations a year, there's got to be a process to get people, for perspective, when a fighter squadron goes and travels somewhere, there is a whole spin up. You don't just go and land there. It's a lot more involved than you think. Probably more work than it should be, but you go somewhere, you go get all the information. You have someone in the squadron brief, this is the airfield, here's where we're going. And then you get there, and then someone else briefs you once you get there, all the same information that you got before. And then you go fly what's called an LAO, a local area orientation. So take off, land, fly around, check out the airspace, make sure you have the right frequencies. And then after about 5 or 6 or 7 days, you're all right, now let's actually go do the thing that we actually came here for. I don't think that either of your teams have that luxury. And I think Asher, you and I had talked a little bit about some technology and how do you modernize the way that you chair fly these things, because you have different airfields, traffic patterns, field elevations, runway lengths, where show center is, and all these different variables. And then you throw in weather. Man, there's got to be a lot to sort out.
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that your point about the typical combat Air Force advanced team that goes out for 5 to 6 days with multiple people. Here's what ours looks like. We have one person that's Thunderbird 8 with his crew chief. He'll jump in an F-16, fly across the country one day before the main push happens. And that's similar this year. So he'll arrive on station and he'll have about 12 hours to prepare the battle space for the arrival of the big team. Here's what that arrival looks like. 7 jets, 7 more F-16s. So Thunderbird 1 through 7 will fly across the country. We'll refuel usually multiple times. We're typically going east from Las Vegas. So we'll typically lose 2 to 3 hours in that journey just in daylight alone. Barely make it onto the ground in time to put the jets to bed. Our C-17 will land. That's got 70 people on it with all of our spare engines, parts, everything that we would need to operate logistically in that new environment. No, by the way, it's never on an Air Force base, right? So you can forget about back shop support, anything that you need to reach back to fix jets on the ramp. It's all got to be in that C-17. To include all of the show center equipment, everything required for the audio visuals, and just everything that's required to put on an air show. So that's going to land. It's going to unload overnight. And then the next morning, we're going to fly a 7-turn 6 or a 7-turn 7 with the 7 to 8 fighters that we've got on the ramp. It's just astounding. And that is, Paco, to answer your question, that is our LAO. The first sortie we do is basically a demonstration, but just with the Diamond. And then our second sortie is a full up Delta practice that these days is being watched by a lot of people because they're starting to sell tickets to those Friday shows. Practices. And then we'll fly Saturday, Sunday. Monday, we'll load it all back into the C-17, take all 8 jets back across the country to Vegas, land, download, rebuild everything. We'll fly a double turn practice on Tuesday. Wednesday is our day off, our weekend. And then Thursday, we do it again. And that's the typical flow from Advon through the end of a show, which is a pretty astounding ask for the team. What I'll tell you is the only reason it's possible is because of the level of authority that the Thunderbirds have, the policies that are in place for Thunderbird 1, for example. So squadron commander on the ops side, I don't have a group commander. I am effectively the maintenance group commander as well of my own maintenance team. So I have all the MXG authorities, and I've got actually a significant portion of wing maintenance authorities for waivers, whatever I need to do to get that mission done on the road. And that is just exactly how the Air Force should work, because there are a lot of times when I need a part for an EPU and it's just not going to happen. And so Thunderbird 11 will run into town. He's the maintenance officer for the team. He'll run into town and literally find like what we call the blacksmiths, where you're going to an auto parts shop and trying to cobble together a piece to make something work on the road. It's pretty cool to watch the innovation that comes out of those guys. And that happens because we have the authority to just say, go.
My last probably 5 years or so of active duty, one of the big things that I've kind of dawned on me is like, it's pretty simple, like the formula. When you align the mission, resources, and accountability at the same person at the same level, magic happens. And when you take either one of those away and you give it to someone else, or you put it in another process or someone you have to go get permission from, that's where it falls apart. So, the buck stops with the commander. So Astro is the commander, so he is accountable for what is going on, but he also has the authority to do it, which I think is missed on a lot of different military organizations. The Army calls it mission command. The Air Force is starting to embrace that a little bit with agile combat employment. But again, if you delegate those authorities and you have trust and accountability, I think that's a big part of the equation. And Fizzle, I would assume the Blue Angels are very similar, but you don't use a C-17 to move your team around. Do you use the C-130?
We do. We have a C-130J, Super Hercules, affectionately known as Fat Albert. Fat Albert's been a part of our team since the 70s. It just a life of its own, bigger than life. One of the favorite parts of sometimes the show, but its primary mission is logistics support. But we are fraternal twins in this type of schedule for sure. Some small differences though. We usually leave our same thing. Blue Angel 7 will depart the day prior to go get everything set up. Has about that same 12-hour window to go get everything straight. Takes off with a 7 crew chief, affectionately known as a 7 geek, and they go and they just run everything down. And kind of a cool part about it, before I kind of go into the schedule piece, I think we both kind of have these contracts. It reminds me of the book Freakonomics. If you remember there in the 80s, Van Halen would require that all the brown M&Ms, are taken out of the bowl. And it was a way that they could sort of cross-check that the contracts that they wrote up for these concert venues that were, pretty rickety old places then, that they could ensure the contract was read and being abided to. Now, again, it kind of led that self towards this prima donna type thing of, this hairband is just so needy and, you have to get to this pain of brown M&Ms, but it was pretty genius. And we don't really have those Easter eggs hidden in our contract, but you do know when there's certain things that are missing from the things that you've laid out that ensure the safety and an effective, fun flight demonstration. If those are missing, it kind of forces you to have a little bit more of a keen eye towards what's going on. So on Thursday morning, we will all load up on Fat Albert. Now, we're loading up and taking off about 6 a.m. It's self-contained. We've got 49 people on that and all our support equipment. And then the Delta will take off with 6 jets after that. We're 7 to make 6 for the flight demonstration. And of note, the Blue Angels have never canceled a show for a maintenance issue. So I think that, obviously both teams take a lot of pride in that. And it's something that our maintainers work very hard to make happen, because there definitely have to be some creative solutions or long nights to make it happen. And our folks do it every year, every show.
That's amazing, by the way. So
it's pretty.
For those, yeah. For those that aren't aware, like a normal fighter squadron, like there's battle rhythm and ops tempos and things like that. But there is a point where you push too hard, and then the machine starts to break down. I'd say probably once a year at least, it is normal for a fighter squadron to just cancel a day of flying because the maintenance backlog is so bad. Maintenance can't generate the jets. More jets are breaking. You don't have the people. And so your 12 jets that are available to fly goes to 10, goes to 9, goes to 8, goes to 7. Like, all right, guys, like this, we have to take a knee and let maintenance catch up. So
yeah,
I think that speaks a ton to the unit cohesion and teamwork about how you're able to balance that, both on the ability to generate aircraft, but the battle rhythm that you can maintain throughout a show season and do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you hit it hard. Day one, the T-Birds are no different. Boss, y'all usually do survey on arrival, right?
That's right. Yep.
So they'll survey on arrival. We call it circles and arrivals. We don't do ours on arrivals. There have been years past that they did, but what we'll do is we'll land after our transit, do a quick media availability where we can kind of get out there with the media and kind of get the story told for the show, the upcoming show that weekend. And then we will debrief real quick, and then we'll brief up for our first practice performance of the day. Go out and do that and knock that out, get a quick practice in. And then we'll do the same thing on Friday. We'll practice Friday morning, do some high school public outreach type events. And then usually that night there will be a social function that kind of gets us involved with the air show and the local community. You hit Saturday and Sunday, which are your air shows. And most of the time, pending the distance, we'll actually pack up and depart Sunday night. And then when we get back home in Pensacola, we do our debrief, and that's where we'll kind of nug down on the Sunday performance. We'll always do a debrief after every event, but we'll look into how the flight execution went for that air show for Sunday, so that again we'll get the Blue Angel weekend on Monday, day off, and then back to practice Tuesday, back to practice Wednesday, unless it's a show site where we got to get out a little earlier. But it's remarkably similar.
Because I think this has started to become public through a couple of things I've seen online recently. But the other thing that blew my mind about the teams is that, we talk about flying 12 sorties a week. And I think one of the assumptions I had was, well, then, okay, obviously they're not briefing or debriefing, right? It must be just like reps. No, they are full briefs and debriefs. Like I'm talking 2-hour debriefs, especially in training season, to pull apart the lessons from your lines placement, everything that you've got to do to pull this demonstration together. And it doesn't let up. So all the way to our last show on November 7th, we're going to be doing a full debrief to make sure that we've got it right.
This is exactly why we're recording this now, because coordinating this podcast was way harder than I thought it was going to be, because as you could tell, like these teams are extremely busy. So this just happened to just be the perfect time to get them both anchored for an hour or two to talk.